Being a child was much more simple than being an adult for sure. Smallville was part of my childhood. It was something I grew up on, something I idolized, something that I wished was real but never was. It's insane to think the show is as old as it is, as it feels like it aired its finale yesterday. It's the show I've rewatched in its entirety the most. If you haven't guessed by now, this video is going to be all about the television show Smallville, and a celebration of its can-do attitude and spirit. With the show Smallville turning 20 years old and allowing me to feel even older than I already am, this is going to be the first in a series of videos throughout the year, probably once a month, that will celebrate the show for its 20th anniversary of its premiere and its 10-year anniversary of the end of its 10-season, 218 episode run. Damn, that's a lot of episodes. For those that don't know, Smallville is a show about the origins of Superman before he became Superman, with the series finale culminating in Clark Kent finally fulfilling his destiny and becoming Superman. Why celebrate such an old show? Well, like the Harry Potter film series, which also turns 20 this year and makes me feel like I have gray hair even though I'm only in my mid-20s, Smallville was childhood. They both lasted for the same amount of time, 2001 to 2011. But Smallville was a show I could count on being on week in and week out. In my household, it always felt like seeing a big summer blockbuster in a crowded, jam-packed theater. Both summer blockbusters and Smallville were treated like events. I had always wanted to finally see the day where Clark Kent would embrace his alter ego of Superman. To finally see him, after all that time, become the hero we knew he was going to become. It was a show about growing up, embracing destiny, not only with Clark's destiny, but with Lex Luthor's as well. It was also about teamwork, honesty, the dissolving of friendships, best parents of the year, best worst parent of the year. It was a show full of ups and downs, just like the entirety of Season 7's mess. Ups and downs are what make a show so great and keep you coming back to watch every week, while probably pissing you off every week as well. Why do you think one of the reasons the show Supernatural lasted as long as it did, other than it had a huge fandom and was immensely popular? It had its ups and downs as well, just like any great show should. There's just so many factors that give Smallville an identity. I can't name them all, and if I did, we would be here for the better part of 2.5 weeks. But I feel no shame in making the biggest declaration to ever come out of my mouth, since I've said The Last Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie, and the entire sequel trilogy is actually good. Ready? Smallville is the best superhero show ever made. Smallville was a show that set the landscape for superhero television, that without it we would not be where we are in regards to other superhero shows. We wouldn't have Arrow, we wouldn't have Gotham, which is a huge joke of a show anyways, we wouldn't have The Flash, we wouldn't have Legends of Tomorrow, we wouldn't have the big crossover events like Arrowverse, which, by the way, I refuse to acknowledge this sequence as canon. You could also make the case that the Daredevil, Punisher, Jessica Jones, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Iron Fist, and would not exist if it weren't for the impact Smallville had on the superhero landscape. Yep, I said it! If it weren't for Smallville's success and popularity, there is no way the landscape of superhero television would exist today. Smallville shaped that. It made it what it is. I definitely understand that there are some arguments that could be made. For one, Smallville wasn't the first television show featuring a superhero. Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman aired from 1993 to 1997. And when I say The New Adventures of Superman, I don't mean this atrocious trash. You also had the Wonder Woman TV show starring Linda Carter, as well as shows like The Incredible Hulk with Lou Ferrigno. The second argument that could be made is that shows like Daredevil and The Punisher would have been made anyways and would have been successful no matter what because of how successful and popular the Marvel Cinematic Universe is, and that those shows are a way to expand on that universe and expand on the story that has already been established in the films. But we have to keep in mind that Smallville aired at a time when it seemed as if superhero shows were still trying to find their footing. And because of that, Smallville knew exactly what it wanted to be and what it needed to be. It seemed very unprecedented for superhero shows with this magnitude and scope, and I'm talking Justice League level stuff here, to even find their footing the way Smallville did, and I will be forever grateful. This show allowed me to embrace 10 of the best years of my life. It was a show where I could find solace in its comfort, its warm embrace, its invitation to bring you on this coming-of-age journey that not only showcases the characters embracing their destinies, but inspires you, the viewer, to find your destiny and prove that you have something you thought you maybe never had, just like The Last Jedi did with Rey being a nobody. The show taught you that valuable life lessons, gave you promising advice in the face of adversity, and proved you don't have to be special to be important. Just like The Last Jedi. Oh my god, are The Last Jedi and Smallville blood relatives? Mind. You just have to be you. In that sense, I feel as if any superhero show that came either before or after hasn't really embraced that. It seems like all of the attention is now focused on which superhero show we are going to make next, which superhero is going to show up, teaming up the Justice League very often, or creating a cinematic universe on television and focusing way too much on the crossovers, or when they could do the next cool special effect that the cable network television budget allowed them to do. It just seemed like nothing had the heart, the emotion, or the investment that a show like Smallville had. Smallville was so good at being intimate in both its smallest and its biggest moments, allowing the viewer to experience closed-door conversations, as well as building up a world full of superheroes to not only expand the vast landscape of the show, but to also further progress the story. Even in its weakest moments, it has characters you care about. It's a show that when you watch it with a group of people, it brings out the best in everyone, which is a huge message this show conveyed right from the beginning of the pilot down to the final scene of the series finale. As I've said, there are glimpses of greatness of the show, while glimpses of mediocrity and even glimpses of, wow, just why, occur as well, and the show fully embraces them. Hated how Clark didn't quote-unquote literally die when fighting Doomsday in the Season 8 finale, but died quote-unquote metaphorically. Here's a fight between Clark and Zod in which he may actually die and makes up for that bullshit. Hated how annoying Lana Lang got. Here's Lois Lane for you. Hated how Kara was a beat-for-beat carbon copy of Clark, repeating the exact same storylines he experienced. Boom! Now she's off the show. Problem solved. Hated that we brought Zod back. Here's a random zombie episode, which was actually pretty good and really didn't have anything to do with Zod until that awesome final scene. Hated how they cheated Jimmy Olsen in Season 8. Here he is again in the series finale. Like, seriously, what am I looking at here? This man, Jesus, he grew up to be exactly like his brother who faked being him. Not literally Jesus. I just kind of went off script for a minute, just putting in my own thought, and Jesus came out. This man is not Jesus. My point is, yes, some of the plot lines are flat out silly, and for the lack of a better word, dumb. But Smallville always responded by having an answer to that problem almost immediately, providing relief with a storyline or a character that made every scene he or she was featured in instantly better. Lex Luthor is the biggest example of this. A very mediocre to very bad episode could be vastly improved just because of Lex's presence. It could also be the fact that Michael Rosenbaum is the greatest Lex Luthor of all time, so thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And speaking of Lex, let's just deep dive into this character for a moment to understand my point here. Lex Luthor is initially portrayed as Clark Kent's friend, but slowly descends further and further into madness until he becomes the ultimate villain that Jonathan Kent and to some extent Clark had always feared. As Papa Kent once said, never do business with the Luthors. It was such a smart move to portray Lex as a friend of Clark's, who was always there when Clark needed something, even advice. Portraying both the friendship and ultimately the dissolution of that friendship made not only Lex a deeper character than we had previously seen, but also Clark a deeper character. These two are friends and eventually become rivals. Who doesn't love that type of story? And this show portrays it so beautifully, and Michael Rosenbaum's portrayal of Lex is probably the biggest reason next to the writing as to why this works so well. He's so committed that if you saw him in real life, you would start to quiver. This version is not after land. He is doing some shady shit, and shady shit that could have potential ramifications and consequences for the people around him. Not just his friends, but his family, business partners, or a random stranger he probably just met. Rosenbaum's acting and the writing makes Lex's sadistic nature more believable and easier to swallow, rather than just being a Gene Hackman clone or wannabe. They gave Lex Luthor layers and depth in ways that we have never seen before, and make Lex the most relatable he's ever been. It's such a surprise in terms of development, and every move he makes catches you off guard. Yup, that's how damn good Lex Luthor is in this show. I feel as if this were any other superhero show, the villain would be developed in a way that just makes him the villain or the bad guy, without giving him a deeply layered and meaningful character arc that would offer glimpses into the motivations of his character. This is what Smallville did right with Lex. It gave us someone to sympathize with, a villain to absolutely despise, and everything in between. If that doesn't spell the quote-unquote deeply layered character, then I don't know what does. Comparing a show to a movie is a completely different thing, but this is a huge reason why Luke Skywalker's character arc in The Last Jedi never felt like it betrayed the character for me. He experienced everything his life offered, the highs, the lows, and the in-between. I have a lot more to say about Luke, another video for another time, and who would have ever thought that I would have made so many Last Jedi comparisons in this video. But making a villain as detailed as Lex isn't something I don't think most of these superhero shows put any effort into anymore, or at least these CW shows. Smallville understood how to develop its characters in realistic and natural ways. After watching Arrow and The Flash and seeing where these shows eventually went, I never had that feeling with any of its villains, or just any of its characters for that matter. It just seemed like they were people in front of a screen playing real-life versions of themselves, but saying they were this character. Every time I see Stephen Amell, I'm like, yeah, you're just Stephen Amell. You're not Green Arrow, you're Stephen Amell. I never once felt that way about Smallville. Every time I saw Michael Rosenbaum, I'd be like, you are Lex Luthor, buddy. Anytime I saw Erica Durance, I'd be like, you're Lois Lane. Anytime I saw Tom Welling, you're Clark Kent. You're not Superman quite yet, but you're definitely Clark Kent. It got me to think more deeply about how characters in visual mediums are to be portrayed. What do I like? What don't I like? What qualities do they possess? Is this character a good person? Is he or she a bad person? Is that necessarily a bad thing? What defines their journey? What shapes them into the characters they eventually become? You see, Smallville was able to do that with its characters, making them feel more real. Watching any other superhero show, I've never felt that way ever. And no disrespect to Arrow or Flash or Legends of Tomorrow, I have watched them, and I don't hate them. It's just, Smallville just did it all better. None of them will leave a lasting impact like Smallville did. The experience I had with Smallville was never matched by any other superhero show to this day, and I don't recall ever being as impacted by not just superhero shows, but any show as much as Smallville. Smallville will always stand the test of time, and has laid the fundamental foundation for any superhero show to follow in the future that I just don't think any other show has lived up to. It has and will forever leave behind a lasting legacy, being the first of its kind to embrace thought-provoking messages, layered characters, developed mythos, and an absolutely positive experience that will leave you feeling shaken, broken, depressed. Well, I guess that's not that positive, but it will also make you feel happy, courageous, and adventurous. So there you go, there's the positivity. Smallville lived on until its final moments, delivering one satisfying or heartbreaking moment after another, from its impressive series premiere all the way down to a final season and series finale that somehow managed to stick the landing with all the ups and downs in between. But that's what makes the show charming, reveling in its highs and its lows, like any great television show should. Shows come and go, and you forget about them either a year later or almost instantly. But Smallville isn't that show. Smallville will forever live in my heart, and it will never once be forgotten. Its legacy presses on harder than it ever has. As Papa Kent once said,
always hold on to Smallville.
And I always will. Never will I let it go. It'll stay with me, always and forever. Thanks for watching.